If you had seen me that night, you'd have thought I was just another tired waitress, counting tips and pretending my back didn't hurt. I used to believe my life was small, invisible, nothing anyone would ever make a movie about, until the night I realized the men I served drinks to could end a life with a nod, and that somehow my baby was standing in their line of fire. Bar was already sweating before midnight, thick cigarette smoke, sticky floors, cheap perfume fighting with spilled beer. I kept one hand on my tray and the other over the knot in my stomach, pretending it was just hunger. It was. I was 3 months pregnant, my apron just loose enough to hide the small curve I checked in every reflection. Every time the bathroom mirror showed me that tiny swell, I heard his voice again, sharp and cold. Abort it, Anna, I'm not ruining my life for a mistake. I'd laughed when he said it, the dry, broken kind of laugh you give when you still hope they'll take it back. He didn't. He just grabbed his jacket, slammed the door, and left me standing in the kitchen with a shaking glass of water and a baby that suddenly felt like it was burning inside me. I spent the next day crying into my pillow, then the next night back on my feet, because rent doesn't care if your heart is in pieces, and the men who own the neighborhood care even less. Everyone in our street knew who owned El Puerto, the bar where I worked, but we never said his name out loud. We called it the boss's place, like the building itself might be listening. His men came in first, always 2 or 3 at a time, clean suits, cold eyes, guns they pretended they weren't carrying. I learned to keep my eyes on their glasses, not their faces. I learned that kindness in a place like that meant they didn't look at you too long. That night the regular noise felt wrong, too nervous, too forced. Laughter died quick, glasses clicked softer. From behind the bar I saw it in everyone's shoulders, the boss was coming. Even the music seemed to lower itself. I wiped the same clean spot on the counter 3 times, trying to stop my hands from shaking. My manager, Julio, caught my eye and jerked his chin toward the tables. "Keep moving, Anna," he muttered. "No mistakes tonight." Mistakes, that word again. My ex had spit it in my face that afternoon right outside the bar in the street where everyone could see. He was drunk, half angry, half scared of his own reflection. "You think I'm gonna be a father to that? You're crazy," he'd shouted, pointing at my stomach like it was a crime. "Get rid of it. I'm not being tied down to some stupid mistake you made." Some people looked, no one stepped in. In this part of the city you learn fast, you don't interfere, you don't draw attention. And me, I just stood there swallowing my pride and the taste of metal in my mouth, telling myself I would remember his words only so I could one day prove them wrong. Now hours later he was in my head while I carried a tray of sweating beer bottles past a table of the boss's men. One of them, a tall guy with tattoos crawling up his neck, watched me too closely. His eyes dropped just for a second to the faint curve of my belly under the apron. My heart jumped into my throat. He raised his eyes back to my face, steady, unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, he shifted his chair so I could pass without turning sideways, without brushing against him. It was such a small kindness, it almost hurt. The door opened with a slow squeak, though I swear it sounded like thunder. Every head turned. The air changed. I felt it like pressure before a storm. 2 more men walked in first, scanning the room, and then he followed, the boss. I had seen him only once from far away, through the smoky glass of Julio's office. Tonight he was 10 steps from me, real, solid, terrifyingly calm. He didn't look like the monster people whispered about. No gold chains, no flashy rings, just a dark suit that fit like it was afraid to wrinkle, a simple watch on his wrist, and eyes that saw everything. That's what hit me most, his eyes, not cruel exactly, not soft either. They were the kind of eyes that had seen too much and decided to feel less. "Rafael," Julio breathed under his breath, and I realized with a jolt that he'd said the name out loud. The room didn't explode, no one died. The boss simply walked to his usual table in the back corner, the one everyone avoided like it was cursed. People went out of their way not to look at him. I did too, mostly. But I caught glimpses in the reflections, his hand resting lightly on the table, the way he leaned in when his men spoke, actually listening, not just pretending. Julio nudged me forward with the tray. "Go, table 12, and try not to drop anything, for God's sake." The closer I got, the more my palms sweated. I could feel my pulse pounding in my throat. I told myself it was just another customer, just another table. I'd served drunk men, screaming men, men with blood on their knuckles who still wanted their whiskey with ice. But this was different. Power has a weight to it. You can feel it before you even realize where it's coming from. I stopped at his table, eyes on the tray. "Good evening," I managed, my voice softer than I meant it to be. "Drinks." One of his men started to speak, but Rafael lifted a hand and the man went quiet immediately. That tiny gesture made my skin prickle. The boss turned his head and looked straight at me for the first time. Up close he looked tired. Not physically, his posture was perfect, his hair trimmed, his jaw smooth. But his eyes, they carried something heavy. He studied my face like he was memorizing it, not in that hungry way I knew too well, but like he was searching for a name he'd forgotten. You're new, he said, voice low, calm, with a slight rasp like he didn't sleep much. What's your name? Anna, I answered, hoping he couldn't hear the tremor. I've been here a few months. He let his gaze drop for a fraction of a second to my apron, the way it stretched a little tighter over my stomach. The world narrowed, I felt naked, exposed, then his eyes came back to mine and something unreadable flickered there. Water, he said finally. For me, no alcohol tonight, and food, she looks like she's going to faint. His men chuckled softly, I didn't, my cheeks burned. I'm fine, I muttered, just busy. Bring her something to eat, Raphael said, not looking away from me but speaking to Giulio, who had suddenly appeared at my elbow like a desperate shadow. On my tab. Of course, boss, Giulio said quickly, right away. I wanted to refuse, to say I didn't need charity from a man people claimed dumped bodies in the river. But the truth, I did need it. I needed the calories for the tiny heartbeat inside me that no one in this room cared about. No one, except maybe the man my ex had called a mistake. I turned to leave, and that's when the door slammed open again. The sound jolted through the room, conversation stuttered and stopped. Raphael's men shifted, hands almost casually moving closer to where I knew their guns were. I froze mid-step, the tray balanced carefully in my hands. My ex stumbled in, half drunk, eyes glassy, shirt half buttoned like he'd gotten dressed in the dark or in someone else's bed. For a second he didn't see who he was walking into, he only saw me. There you are, he slurred, loud enough for the whole bar to hear. His gaze dropped, zeroing in on my stomach like a target. Look at you, showing it off now, huh? You happy with your little mistake? Every muscle in my body went stiff. Go home, Diego, I said through clenched teeth. Please, not here. He laughed, bitter and mean. Not here, why are you ashamed now? You weren't ashamed when you trapped me, were you? Tell them, he shouted, throwing his arms wide, spinning a little. A couple of glasses clinked as he bumped a table. Tell everyone this is my kid so they know I'm not dumb enough to fall for it. People stared, then quickly looked away. No one wanted to be part of this. No one wanted the boss's attention to slide their way. I could feel heat rising in my chest, shame burning up into my face. I thought of our baby, small and quiet inside me, hearing his father call it a trap, a burden, a mistake. Diego, stop, I begged, my throat tightening. Please, you're drunk, go. He took a stumbling step closer. I stepped back, bumping into a chair. The tray in my hands rattled. My heart hammered so loud I could barely think. Somewhere to my left, I heard a chair scrape slowly across the floor. Don't please me, he snarled. I'm not paying for this, I'm not raising it. It's not my problem if you're too stupid to. Enough. The word cut through the room like a knife. Calm, cold, final. Everything went silent. I saw it in Diego's face first, the moment he realized he wasn't just yelling at me in some anonymous bar. His eyes flicked past my shoulder, and all the drunken bravado drained out of him in an instant. His jaw tightened, his mouth opening and closing like he'd forgotten how to speak. Slowly, I turned. Raphael was standing now, his chair pushed back with absolute quiet. He wasn't shouting. He didn't need to. The air around him felt heavier, like sound itself was afraid to move too fast. His eyes were on Diego, sharp and dangerously calm. You're making a scene in my place, Raphael said, his voice soft but carrying to every corner. You're disrespecting my staff, and you're calling a child. He paused, his gaze shifting to me, to my shaking hands, to the swell under my apron. A mistake. Diego swallowed hard. I didn't know, I didn't mean. Didn't know, Raphael tilted his head slightly, studying him like an insect under glass. Then without warning he stepped closer to me instead. The room seemed to hold its breath. I could feel every eye on the three of us. Raphael's presence at my side was like standing next to a loaded gun aimed at the world. He didn't touch me, but I could feel the warmth of him, the quiet control. For a second his hand hovered near my elbow, steadying without quite making contact, giving me a choice, lean in or stand alone. I didn't know why, but I felt less alone just because he was there. He looked at my stomach again, slower this time, as if making a decision. When his eyes rose to meet mine, there was something in them I hadn't expected at all, something almost gentle, buried deep beneath all that power and danger. He turned back to Diego, his voice dropping even lower. That is not a mistake, he said. Watch your mouth. Diego laughed nervously, raising his hands. With all respect, boss, you don't understand, that's my... Raphael cut him off, the faintest trace of a smile touching his lips, but it wasn't kind. It was lethal. No, he said, you don't understand. He took one slow step closer to me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, clean and understated, nothing like the heavy scents of the other men. His eyes stayed on Diego, but his next words felt like they were wrapping around me like a shield. "That child," Raphael said clearly, every syllable deliberate, "is not your mistake." The room went utterly still. He finally looked straight at my ex, his gaze like ice. "That's my child." The first thing I felt wasn't safety, it was panic. The word "my" hung in the air like smoke wrapping around my throat, squeezing. My child, what was he doing? What had he just turned my life into with 3 small words? Diego's face went white then red. "What?" he stammered, voice cracking. "No, no, no, that's not, she's lying, she's trying to trap me, that's my..." Raphael didn't even look at him at first. His eyes stayed on me, steady, searching, as if asking a question without speaking. My hands were trembling so hard the bottles on the tray clinked together like teeth. I couldn't find my voice. I just shook my head a little, more from shock than denial, and he understood something in that small movement. He finally turned to Diego, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "You had your chance," Raphael said quietly. "You threw it away in my street in front of my door. You humiliated a woman carrying life. You shouted that your own blood was a mistake." His gaze sharpened. "In my world, when a man throws away something innocent, someone stronger picks it up, so now it's mine." Laughter rippled softly through the bar from a couple of drunk idiots who didn't understand the danger. One look from Raphael silenced them. No one moved, no one breathed too loud. Diego tried to smile, but it twisted. "Boss, come on, you don't want that responsibility. I mean, look at her, she's just a..." Suddenly, one of Raphael's men was behind Diego, thick arm locking around his shoulders, hand clamping the back of his neck. It happened so fast I barely saw it. The tray shook in my grip. "Careful," Raphael murmured. "We don't call women who work for me just anything. They keep this place standing, they keep you drunk and stupid and alive." Diego struggled, but the man holding him was a wall. Fear finally broke through the alcohol clouding his eyes. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean, I was just angry. She lied to me, she..." I heard enough. Raphael stepped closer, just one slow, controlled step, but it was like the whole world shifted with him. "Let me make something clear, Diego, is it?" My ex swallowed. "Why, yes. If you walk into my bar drunk, shout at my people, and call any child under this roof a mistake again, your last apology will be to God." Raphael's voice stayed soft, but each word landed like a fist. "And I don't think he'll listen." Diego's breathing turned shallow. "So what, you're gonna take my girlfriend and my kid now? You can't just say it's yours, that's not how it works." Raphael's jaw flexed once, the only sign of anger. "You threw them away first, don't talk to me about how it works." He glanced at my stomach and something flickered in his eyes, pain maybe, quickly buried. "From the moment you denied that life out loud, you freed it from your name, you don't get another chance." He nodded to his man. They started dragging Diego toward the door like taking out trash. My ex dug his heels in, panic turning his voice shrill. "Anna," he shouted, tell him it's not his, tell him I'm the father." Every eye swung to me, my throat closed. The truth and the lie crashed together in my chest like a car accident. For a second I saw the path where I screamed, "Yes, it's his, not yours," and let that lie change everything. But I couldn't do it, I wasn't built like that. "It's yours by blood," I forced out, my voice thin but clear, "you know that." My hands were shaking so hard now I had to set the tray on the nearest table before I dropped it. "But you walked away, you made your choice." Diego stared at me like I'd stabbed him, then laughed, high and broken. "You crazy, both of you, you think you can just pretend." Raphael took another step forward, and the laughter died in Diego's throat. "Listen carefully," Raphael said. "I don't care if that child shares your eyes or your nose. What I care about is this: from tonight on, everyone in this city will know one thing: if they touch her," his gaze flicked to me, "or that baby, they are touching me, my business, my blood, my problem. Do you understand what that means?" A murmur moved through the bar like wind. Even the walls seemed to lean in. "It means," Raphael continued, eyes locked on Diego, "that if you ever come near her again, drunk, sober, crying, begging, I don't care, I will end you. Quickly if you're lucky, slowly if I'm not. Because now when you hurt her, you're not just a bad father, you're my enemy." There was no shout, no rage, just simple truth. That was what made it so terrifying. Something broke in Diego's face. He looked at me, then at Raphael, then at the men around us who were watching with flat, dangerous interest. "You can't do this," he whispered. "I already did," Raphael nodded to his man again. Get him out of my sight. If he comes back in this building, you know what to do. They dragged Diego out into the night. His voice faded with each step, still calling my name, still cursing, still insisting it wasn't fair. The door slammed behind him, and the silence that followed felt heavy, unreal. I stood there, empty hands hanging at my sides, legs numb. The bar slowly exhaled, conversations starting again in low whispers, glasses clinking a little too hard, like people needed to hear something normal. Raphael turned back to me. Up close, without the noise around him, he looked like a man who carried ghosts in his pockets. His expression softened just a fraction when he saw how pale I must have been. Julio, he said, not taking his eyes off me, take over the floor. Anna, come with me. I have tables, I muttered automatically. You have a baby, he replied, and you're shaking so hard you can't carry a glass of water. They can wait. Julio appeared at my elbow, nodding quickly. Go, Anna, I've got it. My feet felt like they didn't belong to me as I followed Raphael across the bar. People moved out of his way like water parting around a rock. He opened the door to the small office in the back and stepped aside, waiting for me to enter first. Inside, the noise from the bar became a muffled hum. The room smelled like old wood, paper, and faint cigar smoke. A cheap fan rattled in the corner. A single lamp cast a warm circle of light over a cluttered desk. Stacked envelopes, an old photograph face down, a half-finished glass of water. Sit, he said gently, pointing to the chair opposite the desk. I sat because my legs gave me no choice. He poured water from a glass bottle and pushed it toward me. His fingers were steady, unlike mine. You didn't have to say that, I blurted, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. Out there, that's my child. You don't even know me. He leaned back, studying me quietly. What's worse, he asked, a lie that saves a life or a truth that kills it? I held the glass tight so he wouldn't see my hands tremble. You don't even know if this baby will live, I whispered. I barely earn enough to eat. The father walked out. And now the most dangerous man in the city suddenly says it's his. That's not protection, that's a target. He nodded slowly as if I'd said something he respected. You're right, my name is both shield and weapon. It can save you, it can also paint a red circle on your back. He paused. But tonight, without it, what did you have? I thought of Diego's spit flying, his words slicing through me in the street earlier that day. I thought of the eyes that watched and then looked away. Nothing, I admitted. Raphael's gaze softened almost imperceptibly. You had yourself, he said. You stood there alone. That takes more courage than most men I know. He exhaled slowly. I knew someone once in your situation, pregnant, alone, surrounded by men like me who thought our world was more important than a heartbeat. His jaw tightened. I didn't step in fast enough. I live with that. His voice went rough on the last words, and for the first time I saw a crack in him, a sliver of hurt beneath the armor. So what now? I asked, my throat tight. I walk around telling everyone this baby belongs to you. It doesn't, you know that. He nodded. By blood, no. By consequence, maybe. I stared at him, confused. Raphael leaned forward, resting his forearms on the desk. Listen carefully, Anna. I don't want your life. I don't want to own you. I don't even want you to say my name outside this room if it puts you in more danger. But from tonight, anyone who watches this place, anyone who listens to the murmurs out there will assume that child is under my protection. That is a rumor I will not correct. My chest ached with a strange mix of fear and gratitude. And why? I whispered. He looked at me for a long heartbeat, the fan rattling overhead, the muffled bar noise pressing against the walls like a distant ocean. Because, he said finally, I'm tired of being the man who only knows how to destroy. His mouth curved into a small, humorless smile. Maybe protecting one small, innocent thing is the last decent thing I get to do in this life. His words hit me harder than any threat I'd heard that night. And if your enemies find out, I asked, if they believe what you just said, they'll come for me, for us. He didn't look away. That's my problem now. And mine, I whispered. For a moment we just stared at each other, me, a waitress with a baby she could barely feed, and him, a man who ruled the shadows. Two lives that never should have touched, tangled now by a lie that felt dangerously like hope. Raphael straightened. You'll keep working here, he said, but no late shifts, fewer drunks. Mateo, I realized he meant the tattooed man from earlier, will walk you home, no arguments. I don't need. Yes, he interrupted gently. You do. Take the help this time, Anna. Don't be proud in a war you didn't start. A war, the word landed in my stomach like a stone. I closed my eyes for a second, then opened them again. And if I say no, if I don't want your protection? He held my gaze, something almost like respect flickering there. Then I'll still give it, he said quietly, without you ever seeing my hand. Silence settled between us, full and heavy. Outside, a glass shattered, someone swore, music swelled again. Life was continuing like nothing had changed. But everything had. I wrapped my arms gently around my still small belly, as if I could shield it from the weight of his decision, from the eyes that would soon see us differently. My voice came out softer than I intended. You said tonight that's your child, I murmured. Don't say things you do mean, Raphael. In your world, words are bullets. His eyes darkened with something old and haunted. He looked past me for a moment to a place I couldn't see. Exactly, he said, and I just fired one in your favor. He stood, the conversation clearly over, but his last words lingered in the air, heavy as lead. As of now, he said, opening the door, whether you like it or not, you and that baby are under my name. He looked back at me, and for the first time I saw not just a boss, not just a criminal, but a man carrying a promise he knew could cost him everything. And in my world, Anna, he finished quietly, names get people killed or kept alive. The rumor spread faster than any official order Raphael could have given. In neighborhoods like ours, news didn't need papers or screens. It traveled in whispers between bar stools, in the quiet code of looks passed over cigarettes, in the way men started moving a little differently around me. Within a week, I wasn't just the pregnant waitress anymore. I was the girl carrying the boss's kid. I heard it first in the market down the street, 3 mornings after that night. I was choosing tomatoes, counting coins carefully in my palm when 2 women nearby dropped their voices. That's her, one hissed. Julio's place, El Puerto. They say the boss claimed her belly in front of everyone. Madam Mia, the other breathed. Poor thing, or lucky, depends how you look at it. Their eyes slid over me, full of fear and curiosity. A month ago they wouldn't have looked twice. I walked home with my groceries hugged close, my heart beating too fast. At the corner I saw Matteo leaning against the wall, arms crossed, pretending not to be waiting. I told you I don't need a babysitter, I said, stopping in front of him. He scratched his jaw, tattooed knuckles flexing. Boss says nobody walks alone, boss pays me, I like living so I walk you. His tone was flat, but I caught the faintest hint of amusement in his eyes. I rolled mine and kept walking. He fell into step beside me like a shadow that smelled faintly of tobacco and aftershave. 2 kids playing soccer in the alley stopped as we passed, their ball bouncing away. One of them whispered, "That's her," and the other grabbed his arm and shook his head, like even saying it too loud was dangerous. Power had always lived in this neighborhood, guns behind doors, money in unmarked envelopes, men who disappeared. But I had never felt it brush my skin before, never felt it turn and look straight at me. Raphael had been right, his name was both shield and target. At the bar, changes crept in like a slow tide. I was moved from the rowdiest tables to the quieter ones. Julio shouted less and watched me more, often shooing me away from the heavier trays. A guard I'd never seen before took up permanent position near the entrance. Raphael himself became a kind of rhythm in my days. I never knew exactly when he would appear, but I felt the tension shift every time he did. Some nights he sat in his corner table, running the city with a tilt of his head and a few low words. Other nights he disappeared upstairs to rooms I'd never entered, rooms where decisions with gunshot echoes were made. But always at some point in the night, he would find a moment where the bar was between songs, between fights, between deliveries. He would pass behind the counter or by the service door and glance my way, eyes dropping briefly to my growing belly, as if counting weeks in the way my apron fit. "You eat?" he'd ask simply. "Yes," I'd lie sometimes. He'd raise one eyebrow. A plate of food would appear minutes later, whether I'd asked for it or not. He never forced me to sit, never stopped the bar from moving. He just made sure there was always more on my plate than on anyone else's. One slow night when rain hammered the windows and only a handful of regulars huddled at the tables, I caught him alone at the bar, his usual corner empty. Papers were spread in front of him, numbers and names I pretended not to see. "Do you ever get tired?" I asked before I could stop myself. He looked up, surprised. "Of what?" Of carrying all this, I said, gesturing vaguely to the room, the walls, the city beyond. Of everyone jumping when you blink. Of being the one who decides who lives and who doesn't. He studied me for a long moment, then rested his fingers lightly on the glass in front of him. It was water again. I hadn't seen him drink alcohol once since that night. Power doesn't feel like power from here, he said quietly, tapping his temple. It feels like weight. When I was younger, I thought being boss meant freedom. Turns out it means you go last. Everyone else eats, sleeps, runs, hides before you do. You carry their sins and your own. His eyes drifted to my stomach. Yours too, apparently, he added softly. You chose that, I reminded him. He nodded, yes, and for once I chose something that isn't just money or fear. There was a sadness in his voice that made my chest tighten. Who was she? I asked before I could swallow the question. The woman you mentioned that night, the one you couldn't save. His jaw tightened. For a second I thought he'd shut down, pull away behind that cold mask. Instead, he exhaled slowly, like letting out cigarette smoke he'd held too long. Her name was Lucia, he said. She was stubborn like you. She ran a small bakery on the edge of our territory, no protection, no name behind her. She would tell my men to go to hell when they tried to collect from her. I thought it was amusing at first, brave. His fingers curled slightly around the glass. Then my enemies started using her shop as a shortcut, a message, to show me where my lines were weak. The rain outside seemed to grow louder. I kept telling myself I'd fix it after the next deal, he continued. After the next shipment, after just one more problem. Then she got pregnant, and instead of pulling her closer, I pushed her further away. My world is too dangerous for you, I told her. Stay out of it. He gave a bitter half smile, as if she wasn't already drowning in it. The silence between us felt heavy, alive. What happened? I whispered, even though my stomach already felt cold with the answer. They came when I was in a meeting. His voice was flat now, like he was reading off a police report instead of his own memory. My rivals, they wanted to send a message without touching me directly, so they touched the person I had failed to claim. They beat her hard, lost the baby on the floor of her own kitchen. His hand trembled once on the glass, then stilled. She called my name, not my men's, mine. I wasn't there. My hand went instinctively to my belly, protective. By the time he finished, his eyes had grown distant, seeing something I prayed I'd never have to see. I went to the hospital, he said. Too late. She was still breathing, just barely. She told me I was a coward, that all my power meant nothing if I only used it to hurt and never to shield. His throat worked once. Then she died, and I realized she was right. The rain was the only sound for several heartbeats. I don't tell you this for pity, he said, pulling himself back to the present with visible effort. I tell you so you understand something. The night I heard that man call your baby a mistake, I heard her voice again. He met my eyes, and for once there was no distance there. I'm not making the same mistake twice. Emotion pressed hot behind my eyes. So you lied for her, I said quietly, not for me. He shook his head. For all of you, for all the lives we treat like collateral. His mouth thinned. In my world, the innocent are always the cheapest price. I'm trying in my own twisted way to raise that cost. Before I could respond, the door opened and Matteo stepped in. Rainwater on his shoulders, tension in his jaw. Boss, he said, flicking a glance at me, then back to Raphael. We have a problem. Raphael straightened, the softness gone in an instant, replaced by that sharp alertness I'd seen 100 times from across the room. Talk. Word is out further than we thought, Matteo said. It's not just the neighborhood now. People on the other side of the river, they heard you claimed a child, your child. My stomach dropped. Let them talk, Raphael said. Rumors keep some fools in line. This is not just talk. Matteo glanced at me again as if deciding how much to say in front of me. One of our guys was at a card game last night, ran into a kid from Diego's block. Says Diego's been bragging, telling anyone who'll listen that the boss stole his girl and his baby, that he'll make you pay. Ice slid down my spine. Raphael's face didn't change much, but something in his eyes darkened. Diego, he repeated softly. The man can't keep his mouth shut to save his life. Boss, Matteo added quietly, he's been seen with people from Vargas's crew. Even I knew that name. Vargas was the kind of ghost mothers used to scare their children into staying home after dark. Cruzar con Vargas, and your family lit candles for you forever. So that's how they heard, Raphael murmured. He sold his story to men who hate me more than they fear him. What story? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Raphael looked at me, weighing something in his head. Finally, he answered. The story that you're carrying the future of what I built, he said simply. That in your stomach is leverage, a weakness, a way to reach me where bullets can't. I felt suddenly sick. But it's not true, I protested. You and I, we're not. This is insane. In my world, perception is more dangerous than truth, he replied. If they believe it, it might as well be real. My chair scraped as I stood, one hand braced on the table. So because you tried to protect me, you've made me a prize, a trophy they can steal. The hurt in my voice surprised even me. Guilt flickered across his face, quick and raw. I miscalculated how fast they'd move, he admitted. That's on me. So what now? I demanded. I quit, I leave the city. You erase what you said and tell everyone you were joking. A thin, humorless smile ghosted across his lips. If I say I was joking, I look weak. If I look weak, people start dying to test how weak, starting with you. He shook his head. No, there's only one direction for me now, Anna, forward. Matteo shifted his weight. Boss, there's more. The clinic called. They said some men were hanging around outside this afternoon, asking about a pregnant waitress from El Puerto. They followed her chart number straight to their door. They didn't do anything, but he spread his hands. I swallowed hard. I had been at the clinic that afternoon. I remembered feeling watched. I told myself I was imagining it. Raphael rose from his stool in one smooth motion. You're not going back to your apartment tonight, he said, voice leaving no room for argument. Pack what you need. Matteo will take you to one of my places. I'm not moving into your world, I shot back. I don't belong there. He stepped closer, his presence filling the small space between us without touching me. Up this close, I could see the faint lines of exhaustion around his eyes, the scars near his temple a haircut couldn't hide. You're already in it, he said evenly. Not because of me, because a coward opened his mouth to the wrong people. This isn't about whether you belong, it's about whether you live. Fear crawled up my spine, hot and cold at the same time. The baby kicked, a faint flutter against my palm like it could feel the tension in the air. You keep saying my name will protect you, I whispered. All I see is how it's painted a bigger target on my back. He didn't flinch. That's true, he admitted. So now I have to be the shield I pretended to be when I opened my mouth that night. His voice softened a fraction. Let me try, Anna, don't make me watch another woman pay for my pride. The rawness in his tone scared me more than his threats ever had. I closed my eyes just for a moment, feeling the walls closing in. My tiny apartment with its broken window and leaky sink looked like paradise in my mind compared to the unknown hell of whatever place he wanted to hide me in. But outside that apartment now were men who thought my baby was a key to their enemy. When I opened my eyes, Raphael was still there, waiting, not crowding, not demanding, just standing, offering something that looked disturbingly like a chance. How long, I asked, my voice barely steady, how long do I disappear into your shadows? Until it's safe, he said. Will it ever be safe with your enemies knowing my face? I asked. He hesitated, then shook his head once, not completely. The honesty strung, but it also made me trust him more than any soft lie would have. So we're just supposed to live like this? I asked. Me, your men, my baby, your enemies watching every move. Our enemies, he corrected quietly. You're in this now, that wasn't your choice, it was mine, and I will spend whatever it costs to make up for that. The bar outside roared as someone scored in a soccer match on the TV, cheers breaking against the door like waves on a cliff. In here, it felt like the world had narrowed down to two people, and a decision that could not be undone. I looked down at my belly, then back at him. Fine, I said, the word tasting like iron. I'll go, but understand something, Raphael. My voice hardened. If anything happens to this baby because of your name, I will hate you with every breath I have left. A muscle jumped in his jaw. That's fair, he said softly. Hate me all you want, just stay alive to do it. He nodded to Matteo. Get her home, 15 minutes to pack, then straight to the safe house. No stops, no calls. Matteo nodded, already moving toward the door. As I turned to follow, Raphael's voice called me back, gentler. Anna. I paused, looking over my shoulder. He was watching me with an intensity that made my throat tighten, something like a vow burning behind his eyes. I lied that night for many reasons, he said. Pride, guilt, anger, he exhaled, slow and heavy. But now it's not a lie anymore, not for me. I frowned, not understanding. What are you talking about? He glanced briefly at my stomach, then back to my face. I'm not your child's father, he said. I know that, you know that, but understand this. If I have to choose between this empire and that baby, I will burn every corner of this city to the ground. The quiet conviction in his voice stole the air from my lungs. And when a man like me says, "That's my child," he added, the whole world moves. Before I could answer, Mateo's hand touched my elbow, guiding me gently toward the exit. My heart pounded as we stepped out into the rain-slicked street, every shadow suddenly looking sharper, every car too slow, every stranger's stare too long. I clutched my bag to my chest, the baby fluttering inside like a frightened bird. Behind me, I could almost feel Raphael's gaze following, not from the bar, not from the doorway, but from somewhere deeper, the place where decisions are made that can't ever be taken back. I had no idea yet that the safe house he was sending me to had already been mentioned in a conversation hours earlier, in a cold room on the other side of the river, by a man who smiled when he said my name. Or that, by the time I fell asleep that night, thinking walls and guards meant safety, a car with its lights off would already be moving slowly through the dark streets, heading straight toward the place where the boss had hidden what he had just sworn to protect with his life.